All right. I think we can maybe go ahead and get started, and as folks join in, they can join in. So I'm going to start us off with some intros. I am Martella Esposito. I am the Partnership and Evaluation Lead at Nava. I use she, her pronouns, and I am excited to be here with my colleagues who have been doing some exciting work in Montana with Montana WIC. And I would like to pass off introductions to Kevin from Montana WIC, and then we'll hear from Christina from the National WIC Association before diving into the presentation. Kevin, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Martell. My name is Kevin Moore. I'm the vendor lead for the Montana WIC program. We're very excited to be a part of this project and working with Nava, and I'm actually participating in this call on behalf of our director, Kate Gerard.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Christina, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am Christina Chauvenet. I'm the Senior Manager of Research and Program Innovation at the National WIC Association. And I'm excited to be here with colleagues from Nava I know we have a lot of our members on this call. And for those that may not be as familiar with Nava, Nava is a public benefit corporation that worked a lot on healthcare.gov and then expanded that work into other areas of public programs and trying to make public programs nutrition assistance and otherwise accessible and more readily available for people to use. I'm sure Martell will go into more detail about that, but NWA has been working with Nava on a variety of projects over the last couple years. And we have a newly formed WIC technology group where we work on things like this and try and sort of share expertise, obviously from our end on the member side and the WIC side. Martell herself has a background in WIC and also has a really strong team behind her working on how to make different parts of the WIC program more accessible, utilizing technology to enhance program delivery. And so that's what they're really going to talk to today. And I won't go into too much. I won't spoil the ending. I will let them talk about the project, but really an exciting project. So I will turn it back to you, Martell.
Great. Yeah, so thanks, Christina. I actually think you did a really nice job of sharing about Nava. So I don't have much more to add, except that I'm really excited to introduce my colleagues, LP and Daniela, and they'll share a little bit about themselves and get us going with the presentation. And then also I did see a note request for the closed captions, and I will be working on making sure we get those up. So I just wanted to let you know I saw those, and I'm working on that in the background. So take it away, LP and Daniela.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Lauren Peterson. My pronouns are she, her, but as you can tell, everyone calls me LP. I'm the Senior Product Manager here at Nava and the product lead on our demonstration project. I'll pass it to Daniela to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Daniela De Vera. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a senior designer researcher here at Nava and the design lead for this demonstration project with Montana WIC.
Yeah, I'm really excited to follow up to our webinar a couple weeks ago and talk about our discovery phase, So today we'll start by giving some context about the project, talk about what a discovery phase is and what we did during that discovery phase, how we used the activities and learnings from the discovery phase to transition into a delivery phase, and some reflections on this project so far with some exciting things to share about what's coming up next. So we'll get started by talking about this demonstration project. And I'll start by sharing some context, some background context that we focused on more heavily in the previous webinar. So this might sound familiar to some of you, but it really started when Nava worked with the National WIC Association in 2020 on a landscape assessment of enrollment and certification tools. The goals of the assessment were to catalog online tools used by state WIC agencies to support certification, understand and assess opportunities and challenges these tools introduce, and make recommendations to support increasing the ability of WIC to innovate. And not surprisingly, there was already a lot of innovation and innovative ideas out there from WIC staff, participants, and partners, but we did find some real barriers to achieving the visions that state and local programs have had for addressing participant needs with technology. A key finding from the analysis was that most state agencies are approaching certification innovation via a direct extension of the Management Information System, or MIS, that can be complicated for consortiums and cost prohibitive for small and mid-sized states to pursue on their own. Or we found that places are procuring or developing their own standalone tools that can fragment the participant experience or increase burden on clinic staff to manually track or transfer data between systems and apps for participants. Next slide, please. So our recommendation from that landscape assessment was to enable WIC to build tools that are interoperable, speaking to each other, and sharing data via technology called application programming interfaces, or APIs. And we recommend that those APIs are governed by an API standard. So what's an API? APIs are software that can connect disparate technology tools and systems to share data. For example, an API could be built to connect a standalone scheduling tool to an MIS system so that the data from the scheduling tool is accessible to staff in the MIS. This model, coupled with other modern software development practices like human-centered design, can ensure that new tools meet the needs of all users and promote participant choice without compromising operational efficiency. There are currently some APIs in use in some state programs to connect data between technology tools. However, they are built to connect specific tools and specific MIS. This API use is not pervasive or equitable yet across the WIC program. So that's where the vision for this API standard comes in to play. An API standard across MIS systems would open the program up to innovation without needing to make direct changes to an MIS and risk other consortium members with changes. If every MIS implemented an API that aligned with a standard, and if all MIS functionality was securely and safely available via an API, then the barrier to building new ideas is no longer things like, can my MIS support this feature? Does everybody in my consortium want this feature? Or is this tool going to add too much administrative burden on my staff because the data doesn't talk to the MIS? This type of API standard could add additional value because it makes it easier to develop and share tools across agencies. For example, a tool that provided online appointment scheduling could work with any MIS for any agency versus what we found today, directly connecting with just one. And we could have your favorite two-way texting solution from one state quickly deployed again into another state with a different MIS. And it could even enable a future state in WIC where participants could have the option to have most of their certification information obtained from other data sources, like other government programs, such as the tax system and physicians. The technology could enable this if WIC chose to go in this direction. So we set out to define a demonstration project that could learn towards this vision. How might we prototype an API integration and build evidence for the value of an API standard? With what type of enrollment and certification tool could we do that? And almost serendipitously, Montana was thinking about creative projects to support their WIC program goals as well. One of Montana's priority areas from their state plan, which was informed by a very thorough needs assessment, is to increase participation in WIC. They defined the related objective to increase recruitment of potentially eligible WIC participants and a strategy to pursue innovative projects and see whether an online screening or application tool could make access to WIC easier. So we started partnering with Montana on building an eligibility screener as the enrollment or certification tool and kicked off our demonstration project. And in this way, our project is both working on overcoming barriers, systems challenges, and barriers to having APIs connect tools in WIC, in a standard in WIC, while addressing current Montana needs, a screener and referral tool to help with enrollment and certification. So during our 6-month demonstration project, we aim to build an eligibility screener / referral, an API prototype to see if we can improve participant experience with WIC and reduce barriers for referral partners. And you all might be asking, well, doesn't USDA already provide a pre-screening tool for states to use for participants to access? The difference here is that the data will go somewhere from this screening tool. It will go to the WIC clinic so they can take next steps. The second demonstration project goal was to learn towards this API standard vision by collecting evidence for the value of this type of integration. So we want to quantitatively and/or qualitatively show burden reduction for participants and WIC staff. And like we are doing today, we aim to contribute to WIC technology systems change by sharing learnings from this project back with the WIC community. So working towards these goals, the outcomes, next slide, please. The outcomes we are working towards with this project are as follows. For our partnering state WIC agency, Montana will have a completed demo project, a prototype integration with the state's MIS, and this new open source eligibility screening tool, and also newer enhanced capacity for running modern human-centered software projects. And for those of you in the WIC community, our aim is that you'll have additional insights about challenges and opportunities for WIC systems change and modernization, as well as a model API standard for one part of the WIC program. So now that you've got context on the project and its goals, let's talk about what we're building and how we used our discovery phase to validate our direction. On this slide, you can see a high-level view of the user experience of WIC, which we generated from previous research. This is a simplified version, of course, but shows that a WIC participant starts with gaining awareness of the program. This could include referrals from family and friends, from doctors, nurses, or other medical providers, or even other referral partner programs like Head Start. After gaining awareness, they could call a WIC agency and begin their application. And in Montana, there is no paper or online application right now. WIC staff collect information over the phone about the application to help determine eligibility. WIC applicants attend a certification appointment, and with that information and the certification appointment, WIC staff can determine the participant's eligibility, and they can be enrolled in the program. Based in Montana's priority to increase participation, the focus of our demonstration project is in the space between awareness and application, focusing on that eligibility screener application that WIC agency staff can take action on. So, at our project kickoff in April, what you see on the screen here is what we thought the product would look like. We didn't know much yet about what the eligibility screener would look like, but we knew there would probably be a start page with some information content about what this tool was. Then we thought that a user would enter basic eligibility information. We didn't yet know what all of those questions would be or how they would be phrased. And then they would have to submit that information, submit their data, and probably see some content about what comes next. We knew there would be some API that would facilitate data transfer from the eligibility screener to the Montana MIS system, but we didn't yet know how exactly that would be done. And finally, we knew WIC staff would have to see this eligibility information so they could take a next step, like schedule an appointment, but didn't yet know what that would look like. Here's another view of what we knew at the start of the project, a draft architecture diagram for the mock API. We started by assuming that this prototype tool, or the eligibility screener itself, would only interface with the mock API instead of directly interfacing with Montana's MIS. At this point, we didn't know what kind of existing API or import-export functionality Montana's MIS would support, so the idea was to mock out what an API could accomplish if it were built into the MIS. The intention behind this mock API is to pretend that it is the MIS simulating the experience of if the MIS had the API that the prototype tool could talk directly to. And after we kicked off alongside our Montana partners, we set out on our 6-month project. And can you believe we are already almost halfway through? We started with the discovery phase. We'll move into a delivery phase and also have a handoff phase. But for now, I'll pass it to Daniela to share more about that discovery phase and what we learned.
Thanks, LP. So I will be talking about our discovery phase. And just to get us all on the same page, let's talk about what is discovery. So discovery really consists of building a foundational understanding of the environment, the problem space, and then starting to think about, hey, how might we solve this problem that we are faced with? During the past few months, we've really focused on activities like interviews with our stakeholders, staff, teaming partners, participants to help us understand all the pieces of the service and system. And we also spent time piecing together the different parts of the process of applying for WIC on the staff side and the participant side. So for a participant, what that looks like from that first awareness point to the phone call to the interview. And then from the staff side, what the process looks like from their side to really enroll and certify and verify that somebody is eligible for WIC. And so this is all part of our service design mindset, seeking to understand all the parts of this connected service and systems so that we understand the impact of anything we propose, with the impact that that would have on the overall experience. To get more specific, we had some objectives for discovery around understanding user and stakeholder needs based on their current experience around enrollment, awareness and enrollment, and then identify opportunities to improve operations and client outcomes, and then to collaborate with our stakeholders on defining a product and technical strategy. So in order to build that foundational understanding, we started with stakeholder and technical research with Montana WIC and IT stakeholders. We completed some user research with WIC staff and participants, and that looked like interviews with them and going through their experiences and pain points. We used that knowledge to generate key artifacts like system maps, service blueprints, user flows, some of which I'll show in the following slides. We defined a hypothesis and success metrics supported by baseline data. We designed 2 prototypes that we thought would address the problem. And then we also validated those prototypes with stakeholders and then target users for feedback to be able to iterate on those designs, the content, and narrow our product direction. So from all of those assumptions and hypotheses and activities, I'm going to talk about what we actually ended up learning. First, we did speak with our stakeholders, and that did help define a lot of the questions that we actually then generated for our conversations with WIC clinic staff and participants. And we'll loop back to some of the stuff that they shared with us and how that informed the artifacts. But first, we're going to focus on what we learned from clinic staff. So first, we learned that service delivery is really dependent on tenured clinic staff who rely on their experience over formalized processes. Everyone we spoke with who is involved with WIC really, really values WIC as a benefit, and they really try to remove the barriers for folks to receive it as much as possible. In Montana, there is no official user-facing application for WIC, like nothing online, nothing on paper. So customer service is really the core piece of the application process. So it's a lot of verbal communication from initial contact through their entire participation with WIC. And then each staff member really had their own process for running an eligibility interview, but it was all the same general steps and they all used the same determinants, of course. Despite their kind of like individual preferences on how they may run an interview, they were very much aligned on the outcomes of the eligibility interview in terms of, at the end of this, we want to have notes and spirit so that whoever then would take the certification interview would have the same context that the person who took the enrollment call. Having as much information from that initial eligibility interview phone call entered into the MIS really helped alleviate some of the then additional manual entry that clinic staff would need to enter during that second call. And it seems like a small thing, but overall that does help with saving time. And then additionally, the clinic staff was aligned on really what they found to be the worst part of the job, telling somebody that they're not eligible for benefits. They really do try to get folks as far as they can in the process of application until they know for sure that this person or this household, this family won't be eligible. And for a team that believes in and evangelizes the value of WIC in total, it's just really hard to turn people away. Second, the most difficult part of the eligibility interview and certification is just determining income. So there is adjunctive eligibility, like if you're enrolled in Medicaid or SNAP, and this is the easiest way for staff to determine eligibility. But for folks who aren't enrolled in those programs, the experience is really varied. WIC Montana uses a simple PDF chart to outline qualifying income limits. But for a participant, it can be hard to piece together proof of income over a period of time, especially if your household does not have regular income. And even if a household does, then they still have to bring in the right documentation in order to certify in the program. There's a lot of guessing and guesstimating during a certification interview if somebody didn't bring in the correct paperwork. And that can sometimes end up in having to disqualify someone during a certification interview. And that's just a painful process for both the applicant and clinic staff alike. And then we talked a little bit about staff guesstimating that a fair amount of people don't show up for certification interviews with that correct documentation. But with kind of an inconsistent process in preparing people for that interview without like a formal one-pager that outlines what they need to bring in, it can be hard for people to prepare properly. This will actually connect to one of our findings from participants. And income is best given as early as possible, but when folks aren't prepared to answer these questions, it does create more work later on. No surprise to anyone here, I'm sure, but certification takes a lot of time and effort. Recertification can be just as burdensome. One of the pain points here is just it's difficult to schedule appointments for a certification interview. Clinic staff prefer to get the certification appointment scheduled during that original eligibility call. But if somebody doesn't know their schedule or if they can't make that appointment then, it can be a painful process. They have to keep calling each other back during business hours. And it's really on the applicant to be proactive about making sure that that appointment gets on the books. And then ideally, by the time a certification happens, an applicant has established their likely eligibility, but there is still a lot of information they need to provide, including nutrition and health information, and that's collected in person. And staff will discuss and support applicants as they learn how to access and use their benefits, like how to use the card, maybe going through WIC Shopper, the app, what stores around them do accept WIC, and then also provide referrals for other services. All of going through that can be made more difficult if an applicant comes in with a baby or kiddos. It's definitely hard to sit for an hour if you are a small child. And then recertification could take less time, but a lot of the same information needs to be collected and renewed at the year mark, especially if there's a life change like going through pregnancy and then having a baby or something like that. And then our last learning from staff was just more of a reflection. We just really saw how hard everyone worked to get and retain folks on WIC. We know that retention is hard, especially after the food packages stop covering formula, which is a very expensive item. But WIC staff work really hard to build rapport, offer nutrition counseling, and then have those regular check-ins with participants every 3 months, encouraging them to use all the different aspects of WIC's benefits. And then, of course, reminders, hey, your recert is coming up. Here's what you may need to bring in. And then everyone we spoke to just said that their favorite part of working with WIC related to the conversations and support that they are able to offer participants through either counseling or general customer service. So that was just really heartwarming. Moving on to learnings from WIC participants. There we go. Participant recruitment definitely took us longer than expected, but we were able to speak with some active WIC participants and learn about their experiences applying for and using WIC. So first, WIC benefits are super essential in that they create time and structure for parents and caretakers to do their best for kiddos. So many of the folks that we cited or that we spoke with cited that the monetary benefits allowed them to postpone returning to work after becoming a parent, and that the financial benefits helped ensure that they could get healthy groceries every month, which is just really important right now, especially during a time of inflation. And then the other benefits like well baby visits also helped parents ensure that their kids are healthy and meeting those expected milestones for growth. And this is especially helpful for folks who may be or underinsured. And then folks also cited nutrition counseling as being helpful, introducing and reinforcing healthy parenting strategies in developing families. Second, participants want to do as much as possible online beforehand so that they can show up as prepared as possible for their certification appointment. This is something that we heard from multiple folks. In fact, a few of them tried to do research online beforehand so that they can try and save time during those initial phone calls or the certification appointment, especially wanting to know about, hey, what would make me eligible or ineligible, and then what to bring in. Folks knew that income was going to be difficult, so they wanted to make sure that they had what they needed. It sounds like from our interviews that folks had varying experiences getting information ahead of initial contact with an office, especially depending on how complicated their situation may be in their application. And then a few participants were surprised to learn that there's no online application because they thought they had filled one out. It turns out that that was the USDA WIC pre-screening tool. One participant mentioned, I was surprised to have to answer all those questions again in the interview. And it was a moment for us to be able to connect the pieces like, oh, it's because that information didn't go anywhere. And then the next finding here is that participants cited getting to the office as a burden, but it's worthwhile if we can get everything done there and then. Folks were prepared to take a few hours out of their day to get to the office, wait, have the appointment, and return home. This means arranging transportation if you don't have it, getting childcare, or knowing you're going to have to bring your kids in, and then taking time off work, all situations that folks were dealing with in order to make it to that certification appointment. A few folks also cited the price of gas has been worrisome generally lately. So just knowing that that can be difficult when you don't live close to an office, there's a bunch of factors that go into planning that time and that travel. And then in the office, folks were generally happy to take the time knowing that they would be able to resolve most, if not everything, around their certification in that appointment. So the perception was, it takes a half day to do it, but then you get it done, and within a few weeks you have access to benefits. And folks generally felt like that was a pretty quick turnaround. And then lastly, participants want to see a more hybrid and automated approach to work service delivery. Everyone we spoke with said, this is working for me now, but I am hoping for more modernization and automation in the future. And what does that mean? Maybe a blend of doing online and in-person appointments, being able to schedule appointments online, regular automated reminders via text or email. And then some folks had some really interesting ideas around, why can't I just use my tax information? Or like, if it's in this system, it should be in this system. So very interesting ideas coming from participants themselves. So there was a lot of conversations, and from all of that, we started to put together a service blueprint, and that really serves as a map of all of the different layers, the pieces, the groups responsible in delivering the service. And this really helped us understand all the pieces that the applicant and then participant, their journey, and then all of the pieces that the WIC staff and the service layers down like all the way through policy, that's all part of the same system and experience. And so we'll continue to update this map because really in every round of research, we learned something new. You can see that this is a very zoomed out view, and it would take me probably the whole time to walk through what's in here, but we have a lot of notes. It's a working document for us to track our thinking. So across the top is just the different phases of the journey. There's timelines there, and then across the left or down the left is the list of service layers where we have the visible experience. That's the stuff that applicants and participants see. And then the backstage experience, that's what makes the service run. So yeah, this is a high level view. And then at the very bottom, it might be a little bit hard to see, but this is where we actually also start to track how Spirit, the MIS, interacts with the overall system. So again, really capturing all of the pieces of the service delivery. This was helpful for us to be building out as we went through all of our rounds of interviews, because it helped us identify what should we validate, what should we invalidate, and then also helps us understand how a digital experience could improve how participants and clinic staff approach that question of eligibility and enrollment in between awareness and certification, our target area. And then we were also starting to use this as a basis of understanding for that product. I'm going to start to dive deeper into that in the next couple slides. All right, so this was very zoomed out. We start to zoom a little bit more in. This is a user flow of the staff process for determining eligibility. And so that's that specific process that we were interested in thinking about and in replicating in a product, that eligibility determination. So we mapped out how clinic staff currently have that conversation with folks, and this is either happening in person or over the phone. We mapped out all the different things that they ask a participant in that first touch point, all of the points that they make a decision, and then all the different paths that a conversation could take. And mapping out everything in this specific flow, you can see that we asked ourselves a few questions, and those are in yellow and orange, about what this might mean for a product. And this actually helped inform a more specific user flow for our prototype. All right, we're zooming even deeper now. So as we started to understand that conversation that staff goes through, we developed a product hypothesis. We mapped out the flow for all of the essential questions that a staff member would need to know from an eligibility conversation. And then those informed what we are going to ask in our screener. And this I built out a flow integrating the other touch points that were necessary for context from a digital touch point, like in person, you would say, hello, how are you? This is what WIC is. So we need to have a page that explains that. And then also collecting contact information and presenting a list of clinics that somebody could choose from in order to have that certification appointment. All right, so that's the user flow. What does that turn into? It turns into conceptual prototypes. So from that flow, we were able to use that as a basis for developing content for a screening experience, and that informed two concepts, two different ways that information can turn into a user experience, something that they interface with. So the concept on the left is a web application prototype. This is a website primarily consisting of contextual information about WIC and then an eligibility screener web flow. And then we added in an income self-screener so that we could test that. That gives applicants an idea of what income limits may be, and we wanted to get feedback on that experience for folks who are not adjunctively eligible through another program. And then the second concept on the right is an SMS text flow. And so this is kind of a cheat because it didn't actually have a visual interface. I just made one for the slide. It was actually completely text-based. And so we used the same base content that was in the web screener, but we used it as a script where each question or piece of information was just presented as a 160 character long text. Each choice that you see in the web app was actually determined through one question sent as a text to a user. So same base of information, different applications. So during discovery, we tested these concepts as well. And the testing that we focused on in discovery was really around the applicant and participant experience, doing unmoderated concept testing of the web application through an online platform called Maze, and then doing informal usability testing of the SMF concept, which I will tell you about next. All right, so from the web app unmoderated concept testing, we had a bunch of learnings. And so the first one, what we were really looking for here was understanding of the content. So if the content doesn't work, then the screener is not going to work. Users did overwhelmingly understand what WIC was, what the process for applying would be, and what to expect. they felt they were eligible and they understood why. There was no confusing language cited. There was some weirdness around the fact that it was a clickable prototype. There was a happy path and it wasn't a complete prototype in that you couldn't branch off of what the happy path was. And then from our SMS screener concept testing, these were run as informal usability tests where I personally pretended to be a voice bot, which was an interesting moment for me. But what went well was that the language was cited as friendly and conversational. It was a relatively quick experience. And then we also got some really great feedback around what types of income breakdowns would be helpful. And we identified a couple opportunities for improvement of the content as well. Specifically, language around household is confusing, especially because we hear household as different things in your SNAP household, your tax filing household, and stuff like that. There was a desire to have more clinic options so folks could choose the option that worked best for them during business hours and not just where one lives. And then also there were some questions around specific wording around loss of pregnancy and why we were asking that. Okay, we were also able to do technical research. So that was all kind of like user research and systems research or service research. So my last slide about research is going to be about technical research. And so we were able to interview technical stakeholders from Montana and the Spirit user group. And at the beginning of our technical research, we poured over the really good base that Montana had already produced for the landscape, or sorry, Nava had already produced for the landscape assessment. And then dug into other available tech specs from FNS and USDA for things like EBT and MISs in general. And since Spirit as an MIS is currently undergoing re-engineering, we were also able to see both the desktop and web versions of Spirit. We were actually able to install desktop Spirit via VirtualBox, and that gave us a first-hand experience on the installation process and then also how management works inside that program. And then we were also able to explore Spirit Web, a test instance of Spirit Web as a point of comparison. And this was super helpful for us to understand the core functionalities of an MIS, like what does it need to be able to do in order to meet the requirements defined. We learned a little bit about import-export functionality related to EBT, but we also learned that this is not generalizable to non-EBT applications or functionality. And then we also learned about how we might be able to integrate third-party, or how currently there's an integration of third-party applications, how we might be able to use a similar process in order to insert data into their database. And now I'm going to pass it back to LP to talk about transitioning.
Yeah, thank you so much. So how did we use all of this information Daniela just talked through, what we learned about WIC participants, WIC staff, and WIC technology to define a path forward for building the components of this demo project? So first, I'll orient you as well to what is delivery, what is this phase, what does that mean? And during this delivery phase, we are building products and services as a cross-functional team: design, engineering, project management, product management. We continue to iterate our product, adding fidelity to the designs that Daniela shared, iterate based on the research findings we've made. We will actually build the screener in a test environment and conduct usability tests with it, validate it with our Montana stakeholders, and we'll start to evaluate our impact on the defined metrics we created around our user experience. So we're in delivery now. A quick reminder of where we started. We didn't know much about what this eligibility screener would include or how to prototype an API experience. Well, on the next slide, you can see by the end of discovery, we had a clearer vision for what our minimum viable product could be. At Nava, we create vision diagrams like this to help communicate where we're going with our teammates and our stakeholders. So on the left side of this diagram, you can now see that we knew a lot more about what this eligibility screener would include. We knew it would have a welcome page. It would have a basic eligibility screen, then allow a user to choose their WIC clinic and enter contact info and submit that so WIC staff could reach out. There are also some flows for alternate paths, like somebody can self-screen themselves for income eligibility and also see alternate benefits if the screener shows, or if what the user inputs indicates the person may not be eligible for WIC. So that is where we got to by the end of this project. And our minimum viable product is to build the eligibility screener, as I described, and mock API, and have the mock API receive that screener data and produce a CSV file, kind of like an Excel file, with applicant data that WIC staff could use to enter into their MIS system and take next steps. So this is still manual data entry, right? But it is the lightest weight way we could pretend to be an API, which transfers data from one system to another. And though this is still manual entry, it can allow us to more specifically measure the burden of inputting data into Montana's MIS system that would be eliminated if there was an API governed by an API standard that could do that data entry itself. So this is another way to get a baseline kind of metric around that burden. On the next slide is where we hope to understand if another option is available. We want to understand, we learned from technical research that WIC Montana integrates with third-party applications using different things called PowerShell scripts and stored procedures to directly extract data from the database. So in this version of the diagram, the eligibility screener is the same. The mock API will still receive that data from the eligibility screener, but instead it will spit out a file, and that file can be transferred, the data from that file can be transferred into Montana's MIS system, hopefully using some technology techniques called PowerShell scripts and stored procedures. I'm not going into detail on what those are because I myself still am learning how to use those. And we are doing this investigation now to see if this approach is viable. If it is, then we are prototyping this API integration without having to lean on WIC staff to manually enter data. So we kind of came a long way. We started with some assumptions, but we were able to add fidelity to them throughout our learnings from the discovery period. And our research with WIC staff and WIC participants and our stakeholders also helped us define some burden reduction metrics. So one of our goals is to learn towards this API standard by showing burden reduction if there were an API for this part of the WIC program. So on the WIC staff side of things, some of the metrics we're interested in collecting are the time it takes for WIC staff to enter data, the time from intaking eligibility data to scheduling the certification appointment, and general staff perception of burden reduction due to having this eligibility screener. So we'll baseline this with qualitative evidence from the user interviews you just heard about. And our first measure can be the amount of time it takes for WIC staff to enter data from the screener CSV into Spirit. And if it is truly viable for us to integrate, and I'm putting that in quotes because it's not a true integration, but we are prototyping it, we can show the time saved from screener data already being in Spirit if that approach proves viable. On the participant side, we are thinking about metrics around how long it takes them to answer eligibility questions, their user experience of a tool like this screener, and their perception of burden reduction due to having the screener, or things like, yeah, it was great, WIC staff reached out to me instead of me having to fill out the screener and then send all the same information again during my certification appointment. So same baseline here is our qualitative evidence from user interviews. And we think we'll measure against this with our usability testing and further user research in this delivery phase. And the last artifact I'll share with you that came out of this discovery phase is a roadmap. So a product roadmap is a conversation tool that shows what we're building, approximately when we're building it, and in what order. and which initiatives are part of this effort. So on this screen, you can see our delivery phase and the three major initiatives. First, building the eligibility screener and testing it, as well as so the second being the mock API and testing that. And then hopefully the Spirit integration idea, Spirit is Montana's MIS, investigating if that is viable, and if it is, going on to building and testing that. So we were able to wrap up our discovery phase with some clear direction on where to go next, what we could learn more about, and what functionality we could get started building. And I'll pass it back to Daniela to talk about the different types of testing we'll do during the delivery phase.
Yeah, thanks, LP. So during delivery, we're focused less on that kind of like broader testing for understanding, and instead on targeted usability testing to ensure that what we've built will meet user needs across the service, so from both the staff and the user experiences. So first, we'll focus on testing a clickable prototype of a higher fidelity front-end experience that connects to a prototyped output of the back-end experience, which staff would interact with. And these tests will inform any needed changes to content or interface details that we can implement in our live prototype, especially as we move from this kind of sketch fidelity to using the US web design system in their components. And then during the second round of usability testing, we'll be using a live prototype on the front end and then generating sample output for the staff back end. We're not going to be using real user data here. It's going to be in a test environment, but it will still allow us to prototype that experience. All right, I'm going to close this out thinking about the discovery phase summary and reflections. So what have we learned? So much, but to summarize it, we have built a foundational understanding of WIC service delivery in Montana. We've defined needs and goals for users across the service, and that's applicants to participants and then staff. We've started to build an understanding of an MIS, Spirit specifically, and its technical capabilities. And then we've defined goals, metrics, and an approach to build a product that bridges between the point of awareness and that synchronous conversation between an applicant and WIC staff. And then we have some reflections because, you know, it's always good to reflect upon a period of great learning. If my slide goes, okay. What are our reflections after everything we've learned? Well, first, participant recruitment was extremely difficult. It was a really good reminder that even when we're moving quickly, this really is one of the first items that we need to prioritize getting done because it does always take longer than we think. And we've already started building out a recruitment group for the next round of usability testing. I started to do that as soon as I finished the first round of participant interviews. And then second, we had a really solid base of research that we were able to build off of. This allowed us to quickly generate some assumptions and hypotheses for our discovery research. And it's just so much faster to not start from square one if you have the opportunity to, and to leverage all of the knowledge that we have from our stakeholders, from you all who are experts in your own state experiences. And then next, get stuff sketched up as soon as you can in lightweight ways. Perfect is, of course, the enemy of good, but also just making things visual as soon as you can really helps build and broaden understanding across the team and across stakeholders. And then our last reflection here is just try and get access to WIC systems as soon as possible to refine technical approaches. So being able to get into Spirit Desktop and web early on allowed our engineers to touch and feel those applications and allowed us to decide that we should work with the desktop app and not the web app to reduce risk. So our next steps for our project, deliver working software, it's a pretty big one. And then we'll be doing usability testing. And then we will again be sharing our work from the delivery phase publicly with the WIC community. And my next slide actually talks about when we're going to do that. We are so excited about this project. We can't wait to share more about it. So we'll have some upcoming webinars. First, we'll be sharing more updates in September. That's a little bit before the end of delivery, but we'll have a bulk of content to share with you then. And then in November, we'll present out on the outcomes of the project, talk about final deliverables, and hand off the next steps. All right, so mark those dates down, and I'll pass it off to Martel to kind of finish us off.
Yeah, thank you so much, LP and Daniela. That was wonderful. We have about 10 minutes for questions for Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A box or in the chat. And we will do our best to answer them live here. And if there's any that we can't answer live, we will follow up with you with some answers. Yeah, and then we are joined with us. Kate Gerard joins us as the Montana WIC director as well to be answering questions. So we have Kate and Kevin and LP and Daniela and Christina all here to answer your questions. So if you have them, go for it. So far, we don't have any. That's why I'm kind of stalling. Okay, so Amy Malinowski asks, did you go through, need any IRB approval for the user research piece of this project? So we can pass it off to anyone on this in this panel to answer. I also have understanding perspective on this question if I need to jump in as well. So
Let's go to Daniela.
Yeah.
I was waiting for it. So we didn't go through an IRB approval. So we are calling it user research. It's not really formal research for publishing or doing like an academic sort of report. It's more product development research, so it's not considered formal research, and it is not subject to the federal regulations for some human subject studies. There are, though, a number of like protocols and ethical standards that we have detailed in our project documentation that we expect of our researchers, so myself and then anyone who helps me out with interviews or any of the synthesis. And those are really around protecting participant data, maintaining respect for participants, ensuring that there's informed consent throughout the process, and then also getting explicit permission to use the information that we gather in specific ways.
All right, excellent. All right, we got a comment. Thanks so much, makes total sense. And I would agree, just wondering as it applies to some work we are doing in Vermont.
Yeah, also happy to share the research protocols as a document as well.
Great. Any other questions? Any reflections from the other folks here with us, Christina or Kate or Kevin? LP and Daniela got a long opportunity to share reflections, so I'll open it up as we don't currently have any additional questions. So any reflections are also welcome.
Yeah, I think that hopefully folks, I know that people were coming from different places coming into this webinar. So some of you might have been really familiar with some of these API models, and maybe this is the first time you're hearing about them. And I think it's really exciting. I know I've talked to lots of our members about various types of projects they are working on that could benefit from this type of model. So we are going to keep the dialogue going with Nava, and really excited for this project. If you have like specific questions, of course, you're welcome to contact anyone at the Nava team. But I'm also happy to chat through things about how does transitioning to different systems look like? How can you overcome these hurdles that are facing MIS systems, and what is the potential for APIs? How do people translate those? So feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Right. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Christina. It looks like we also have a comment from someone in the audience. We were looking into purchasing a teletask application for two-way text communication. And we stopped as we didn't know if it would be more admin manual work if our state MIS didn't talk to it. So a standard would be awesome. All right, some API standard allies out there. Someone is asking, will the recording of the session be available in the future? I joined kind of late. Yes. We will be sending the recording out to all registrants in a follow-up email. So stay tuned for that. Probably tomorrow. It takes a little time for the recording to process, but at least by the end of the week. All right, you get some just for Danielle and LP, you're getting some kudos in the chat for the great presentation. It was interesting, thorough.
Thank you. It was great to chat about and share what we've learned.
Yeah. Any final thoughts from our Montana friends about this process, engagement in this process?
I just say thank you. This is awesome. I don't have anything to add. You guys are amazing to work with, and we're very excited to see how this turns out and what it looks like to use. Nothing exists like this so far, so very fun.
Great. All right, well, we are 2 minutes before time, but since there are no additional questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up this webinar. Thank you all for attending. Again, we'll have the recording ready probably tomorrow. We'll be sending that out via email to folks who registered for the session. So you can expect to get an email. It'll probably be like a formal MailChimp-esque email. So just something to watch out for. But if you have any issues, you can feel free to get in touch with me or Christina or whomever, and we can send you the direct link as well. It'll also be just generally on our public facing YouTube channel for Nava PBC. So that's another way to find it and access it. It's all publicly available. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your day. And hopefully we'll see you in September for our next share out.